Hi everyone, welcome to this week's video. Today I am bringing something that some of you have asked me about. When I shared the video where I reviewed the Schminke palette in collaboration with Hazel Swan, I showed a watercolor mixing chart I made with all of the colors in the set, and some of you had asked if I could show you a bit more detail of how I built this color mixing charts. So today I am doing exactly that. I'm gonna show you how to make two different types of mixing charts for watercolors. For the sake of time here, I chose a small palette of 6 colors. I have a cool and a warm version of each of my colors. So usually for yellows, the cool yellow is closest to blue and the warm would be more red leaning. So you can also see the difference in between the two tones. With the reds, the cool leaning is always more on the pinkish side, while the warm leaning is more of the true red, warm red. With the blue, is a bit debatable. Some people think in a way, some people think in another way. For the sake of this exercise, when I say I'm using a cool blue, I'm using a blue that is closest to the green spectrum, and the warm blue is closer to the purple spectrum. So cool blue, good for greens, warm blue, good for purples. I have here in my list the names of all the colors I used, the pigments and the brands. And on the side, I made the grid. So first, when you make a watercolor mixing chart, you need to make a grid with the same amount of squares vertically and horizontally of your paint. So here I have 6 paints, so I have 6 squares here and 6 squares here. Same goes for this small grid here. They don't need necessarily to be square, it can be any shape you want, as long as you have the same number of spaces in the horizontal line as you have in the vertical line. And then what you do is I'm gonna mix the colors, crossing both colors on the grid, which I'm gonna show you in a moment. Now, I think I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so you can see better the chart. So the first thing is, for any color grid that you make, always the diagonal spaces will be the pure color. Why? Because it's where the squares of the same color cross. So here I have lemon yellow and lemon yellow, so we have the pure lemon yellow here. Same goes here for the permanent yellow deep, the rose madder lake, so on and so forth. So no matter what is the shape of your grid, every time the diagonal will be the pure color. So I'm gonna start by filling in these squares with the pure colors that I'm gonna use here. So first we have lemon yellow by Sennelier, and this is PY3, a very common pigment for lemon yellow. And you'll notice here that I'm not painting the whole square, I'm leaving some white space beside it, because if I paint the whole square, I need to wait until this paint is dry so I can paint the squares beside it. Otherwise, I'll have this paint mixing with this paint, and that's not what I want for this exercise. So you either paint alternating the squares, so you would go this, 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 and then alternating, and then by the time you arrive here, ideally these squares will be dry, and then you can go back, or you leave a white space like I'm doing right now. Next, we have the warm yellow, permanent yellow deep from Mission Gold, and this is PY65. I did my best to not take colors that I find too opaque or difficult to work with, because one thing you may notice with opaque colors, for example cadmiums, is easy to get muddy mixes. It's a bit harder to get clean mixes of colors. In my experience, maybe you may have an easier time using them. I am not a big fan of opaque colors. Now we have the cool red, which is PV19, the Sennelier Rose Madder Lake, and it's a very bright pink color. You cannot go wrong with this type of red. It works to mix all sorts of secondary colors. And then the warm version, I chose Scarlet Lacquer, and this is PR188. This is a bit more opaque, but not too much. With this though, you have an easier time mixing oranges, but a hard time mixing purples. You get very muted purples with this type of warm red. And finally we have the Cool Blue, Bright Blue by Rosa Gallery. And this is a phthalo blue, is PB15:3. And the warm blue is Ultramarine Deep by Sennelier, and it's PB29. It's a very common color in watercolor sets. And with this blue, you can make gorgeous purples and muted greens. Now I'll start with the mixing. First we have is the lemon yellow column, so I'm going in order here from top to bottom. The first one is lemon yellow with permanent yellow dip. So I'm gonna separate a bit of yellow here. And I'm gonna add a small amount of permanent yellow dip. When you mix yellow with yellow, the color mixes are not too dramatic because they are in the same family, so I'm trying here to get something halfway. In this first mixing chart here, I'm gonna do the following. I'm going to use different proportions for different sides of the grid. Meaning, on this side of the grid, I am going to have proportionally more of the colors that are at the top. So in this line, in this row, I'll have more yellow in all of the mixes. In this row, I'll have more of the other color. So in the case of the lemon yellow and permanent yellow, here I'll make a mix with more lemon yellow than permanent yellow dip. And here I'll do the opposite. So here I made a mix, or I had more lemon yellow. Now I'm gonna try and make a mix here with more permanent yellow dip. It will be very hard to see this mix with more permanent yellow dip because the permanent yellow dip is darker, so it kind of covers whatever change the lemon yellow could bring to it. I can try and add a bit more. The second grid I have here, I'm gonna do something slightly different. First, I'm gonna start the same way I started this one, with all the pure colors in the diagonal. Here I'm gonna try to do a more medium mix, a mix more or less halfway. And then what I'll do here at the top, I'm gonna do a diluted version of the same color. More mastone, more diluted. And then I'll do the same with the red. So I get what I think is a quite good mid-orange. And that's what I'm gonna add in this side of the chart. It's not a hard rule that you have to do it this way. You could do also the mastone here and the diluted version here. It doesn't matter. As long as you follow the orders of the colors, so you know later which colors you mixed, and you are aware of the reasoning behind it. Like here, I can see that I use more yellow here than here. You'll be fine. Now I paint a diluted swatch over here. This type of grid goes a bit faster because you only need to mix the color once, and then you just dilute it with water. So I'm gonna share with you the first grid, which is completely dry by now, while the other ones is still drying. As I said, I have all of the pure colors here in the diagonal, and then I used different proportions in different sides of the grid. I hope you are able to see the difference between the tones. This orange here, you see it is quite muted because it was created with a yellow that is more green leaning and a red that's more purple leaning. So both colors have a bias that is not really orange, and when you have this, that's when you get a muted, toned down orange. Differently from here, where you get a yellow that is more green leaning and a red that is more orange leaning, so you get a slightly more vibrant orange. And here you get an even more vibrant orange because you have true red color with a red leaning yellow. So they make the most vibrant orange out of the three. And I hope you can see that on camera despite my lack of light right now. So it applies the same for greens and for purple. You always have to be aware of the bias of the color that you are using. So this ultramarine is closer to purple than it is to green. The bright blue is closer to green than it is to purple. So this will make more vibrant greens, more muted down purples. These, on the other hand, more muted down greens and more vibrant purples, and so on and so forth. And you get very nice colors with different effects. As you can see here in this column of the mixing chart, all of the colors have texture because ultramarine PB29 is a granulating color. So you see here that I have, I hope you can see, there is granulation in all of the mixes using this color. Strangely enough, also the bright blue had some texture in some of the mixes, and the other grid right here, I still have some of them wet, but I cannot afford to wait until everything is dry. But I hope you can see the difference between the mass tone here and the diluted version over here. Some of them got a bit darker than what it should. Probably the purples I was a bit more heavy-handed, the green as well. But you can see the same thing I mentioned above here as well. So you have muted orange type of color, slightly less muted, and the more vibrant one. And the same thing goes with the greens. You have the brightest green with the crossing between the bright blue and the lemon yellow. So these are two options that you have to make your color grids. If you wish, you could also just do one side of the grid. I have, like I showed you in the beginning, some examples like this one I did for the Sennelier Bright Color Palette. So I just did one side of the grid because I was just interested in seeing the type of mixes I could get with the colors. Then I have other charts I made. This one, I think it was Light Wish, was another video that I shared here on the channel. All of the variation of the beautiful colors. I have another example here with a palette by Core. Same principle, more saturated mixes, more with one color in this side and another color on this side. Then here I have an example with the diluted version versus the mass tone version of the colors. Here is the same. You see, these colors, these charts are bigger, but the principle remains the same. As long as you put the same amount of number of rows and columns and you use the same order of the colors in both directions, just have to pay attention to the crossings and keeping in mind that the diagonal is always the pure color. So I hope you liked this video. I hope it was useful for you in your watercolor journey. Let me know in the comments if you already knew the principles of making such charts, if you use this to test your colors. If you have more questions and you'd like me to make more videos about the subject, I have lots of material that I can share with you, and I love mixing colors, so it will be a pleasure to share more info with you. Don't forget to give me that thumbs up, leave your comments, and I'll see you soon. Bye!